Good afternoon, everybody. All right, we've got people streaming in. We're going to give just a minute before we start the show. All right. Hope everybody's having a lovely day today. Getting ready for probably a long weekend for some people. We've got lots of spring breaks going on right now. All right. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us today. I'm Paula French with Search Influence, and we are going to be digging into what AI really means for SEO in higher education. We know this is a hot topic and it can be a confusing one. You're probably seeing some drops in organic traffic. You might be testing some AI tools and you're trying to figure out what's next. So, our goal today is to cut through the noise and help you refocus your strategy around what's actually changing and what still works from the SEO that you have known and loved for so long. Here's what you can expect to walk away with today. So, the first is what's happening in search now and how AI is changing it, why SEO fundamentals still matter and how to adapt them for AI. We're not going to talk a lot about the SEO fundamentals themselves. We're really going to talk about the how you're going to adapt them part. The third is specific things that your team can do now to stay visible and competitive. And so we're going to share some real life examples with you and give you a framework that you can take back to your team. We've added a few new ways for you to get the most out of today's session. So in your Zoom toolbar, you're going to see 3 features. The first is resources. This includes Search Influence's SEO research study, our SEO workbook, and our new SEO roadmap offering that we have just updated for AI search. So if you were to sign up for that, you're going to get SEO, some AI search best practices included. And we have a blog post on AI search that would be a really great resource to share around with your stakeholders and maybe even pull out some talking points for you when you're going to make a case for AI SEO within your organization. Second is the chat. Drop in any thoughts or feedback throughout. We would love to hear from you. So if everybody could go ahead and drop in the chat where you're joining us from today. And the third is Q&A. You can add questions anytime and we'll answer them live, or we will reply directly in the Q&A box. One of the things I love about UPCEA is getting to know the names and faces of the community. And so welcome back to our returning webinar attendees. We've done several webinars with UPCEA, and also hello to our UPCEA conference friends. We've gotten to meet a lot of you in person over the years, and so we're really happy to have you here with us virtually. For those of you that I haven't met yet, I'm Paula French, the Director of Sales and Marketing at Search Influence, and I've spent the past 15 years helping organizations grow through digital marketing with a focus on SEO. So most of that time, I was hands-on executing and optimizing SEO and paid advertising strategies, but now I focus on building new partnerships and helping institutions find the right strategies to succeed online. Bruce.
Thank you, Paula. Hello, everyone. My name is Bruce Etter. I'm the Senior Director of Research and Consulting here at UPCEA. And really what that means is any and all research initiatives that come through our doors, I have my hands on. So whether that's an individual member study or something larger like the marketing study that just came out, I play a key role in that. So looking forward to today's conversation.
Hi, everybody. I'm Will Scott. I'm the CEO of Search Influence, and I've been working online since the last century. And believe it or not, my first job out of school was actually in higher ed. At the end of the 90s, I ran systems and distance learning for the Department of Health Systems Management at Tulane. Since then, we've worked with thousands of clients driving traffic and enrollment from search and online ads. And throughout, we've recognized that none of this is worth doing if you don't have the tracking and tools to see the impact. Most recently, I've been thinking, writing, speaking, teaching a lot about AI SEO, and a couple weeks ago even was the instructor for a masterclass put on by SMX, Search Marketing Expo, one of the big digital marketing conference producers. and it was all about what they really want to call generative engine optimization, which is too much of a mouthful for me. So I just say AI SEO because that's how it makes the most sense to me.
Just a quick intro about Search Influence. If you don't know who we are a boutique SEO and digital agency with 19 years of experience. And while we specialize in higher education, we also work across a range of industries, which gives us a really broad perspective and the ability to apply insights across verticals. So in terms of working with our clients, we offer flexible partnerships, whether that's full service execution, consulting, or hybrid models that support your in-house team. And so we're proud to be a platinum partner of UPCEA. We're also a Google Premier partner and a certified woman-owned business. And last but not least, we're a member of the Meta Business Partner Program that supports us with our Facebook and Instagram advertising. And just by being here, you have a chance to be one of 4 winners of a $50 gift card, and our winners will be announced live today after Q&A. So now it's time to dive in. What exactly is AI search and how is it different from traditional search? Let's take a look at the key players and how these platforms are reshaping search. So SEO is no longer just about ranking in Google's traditional search results, as you well know. AI-driven platforms are changing how content is discovered and how it's delivered. So the most common tools that you've probably heard of are Google's AI overviews, ChatGPT, Gemini, Microsoft's Copilot, and Perplexity. And so what's different about these tools in contrast to traditional search is that they don't just return a list of links, they generate answers. So they're pulling from large language models, structured data, and authoritative sources to build that response. And so while they're trained on massive data sets, they also look to real-time content, citations, and schema to decide what gets included. So what this means for you is that your content needs to be structured, semantically clear, and positioned as a trusted source so that AI knows to choose you when they're answering a user's question. So as Will said, some people like to call this generative engine optimization, or GEO for short, but we prefer to call it AI SEO or AI search SEO because it is still SEO, it's just adapted for today's search experience, in addition to being a mouthful, as Will said. So unlike traditional SEO, which is focused on ranking and for a lot of focus on, where you are on page 1, are you on page 1? What position are you in? AI search SEO is about getting cited or included in those AI generated answers. So the nuance between those two different things, being cited or being included, is that when you're cited, you are the source for the information provided in the answer. So somebody searches, what degree should I get to be a CFO? Content is pulled from your site, that's shown as the answer, and you're cited as a little source. When you are included in the answer, it might be a search like best online MBA, and there's a list of universities, and you are in the answer. So that's the difference between being cited in the answer and being included in the answer. So instead of just aiming for page 1, like we did with Google search, with traditional search, you're optimizing to be referenced by the AI so that you show up in this search journey. And so, yes, these changes certainly are impacting organic traffic for everyone. If they haven't already, they will in the future. They also create a new opportunity that's really exciting to get in front of those prospective students in their decision-making process. And so when it's done right, this is a chance to show up in a format that feels authoritative, it's helpful, and it's aligned with what they're looking for because they're going to be used to getting answers in this way. And so when they go to do their search for education, you really want to be meeting them in the way that they're ultimately used to getting that kinds of information. So one of the questions we've been getting asked most, we had this, happen at the UPCEA annual conference. The burning question is, how are actual prospective students using AI search? Are they still on Google? Are they actually using tools like ChatGPT and Gemini? And if so, how are they using them? So to find out, we partnered with UPCEA to conduct a new research study focused on prospective student behavior in the age of AI. So the full report is coming this early fall, but the data was too good to not show a few things early to you that can really help you start making a case for working on this now. So like I said, you're going to get a sneak peek of this today, and I'm going to hand you over to Bruce to walk us through what we've uncovered.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Paula, and thank you all again for being here. So really the kind of crux issue here is we wanted to understand how AI might impact search behavior of potential professional and continuing education students specifically, right? And so to do this, we teamed up with Search Influence to help develop this survey. Whenever I do surveys or whenever I'm presenting survey research, I think it's really helpful to have the context of who we're talking about before we dive into some of the results. So I'm going to go through this pretty fast, but this is who we were talking to. So in total, we surveyed over 1,000 people, of which 760 met all of our qualifications. And those qualifications were being between the ages of 18 to 60, having at least a high school diploma. Though I will note, though, roughly half the sample had either a bachelor's or master's degree already. And they had to be at least somewhat interested in advancing their skills or knowledge through PCE, right? I'll also note that roughly a fifth, 18% of the sample was already currently enrolled in a PCE program, right? So I think that's really helpful to understand the who. And now we have time to dive into some of the data points. With that, I want to say, what are some of the things that stood out? And the first thing is this. So here we have, we're asking what or how likely are you going to be to use various platforms to obtain information when searching for a professional and continuing education program? And not surprisingly, at least I would find it not surprising, is traditional search engines like Google or Bing are still at the top, right? 84% of respondents saying they'd be very likely to use these, while institutional websites ranking number 2, 63%. What is a profound shift? Neither of those things, but what is, at least in my mind, is the fact that AI chatbots like ChatGPT or Gemini are outpacing social media platforms, right? Now, the percent difference isn't really that big. It's 2%. But even if they were the exact same, this really reinforces the idea that these new mediums demand the same attention from institutions as social media channels, right? And so we also need to examine how AI is impacting traditional forms of search, like search engines. So when using traditional search engines, which we saw was still the most common way, over 3/4, 79% say they're reading the AI-generated overview if it's provided. I know I'm one of those 79%. I'm always taking a look at that. If I don't have to scroll, that's great. And within the AI overview itself, roughly half of respondents either always, you can see the 11%, or usually 40%, click on the sources of where that content, overview content is coming from. And this is important. And the reason this is important is that among those individuals that are reading the AI overview, even if they're not clicking on them, right? They're just reading it and seeing what the source is. 56% are more likely to trust a source if it's included in that AI overview, right? So this is not a little bit. This is over half that are saying, I'm more likely to trust this if AI is picking it. And so for our institutional perspective, it's really important that we end up being one of those sources because we immediately have greater credibility within the eyes of these learners. It isn't just, traditional search engines and AI overviews, but we're also seeing chatbots, right? So the first state the first one on the left here was a question we asked all respondents around how often are you using AI-powered tools to search for information online, right? And so this is institution agnostic, right? This is not searching for a PCE program. This is just purely search habit, right? And approximately half, 50%, said they're using it at least weekly, right? And these percentages are going to increase. The figure on the right is just over a third that said they would be extremely or very likely to use AI chatbots when it comes to gaining information about professional and continuing education programs, right? And so among those, 78% said they'd use GPT, 56% said Gemini, and 20% said Perplexity. So all of this leads to different opinions, right? AI-generated search results are a double-edged sword, so to speak, in the minds of potential professional and continuing education students. On our positive side, 62% agree that AI-generated search results improve their ability to find relevant programs. However, the accuracy or trustworthiness of those programs is a bit of a mixed bag, right? So we saw some different things earlier, but now we're seeing, I'm not so sure. So 35% are saying if it's there, those results are accurate and trustworthy. 29% disagree with that, right? And I'll reinforce something that Will was saying to me yesterday. He says, these tools are the worst they're ever going to be, right? Their accuracy is only going to improve over time. And with that, I imagine some of the trustworthiness will as well. So as Paula mentioned, what I've shown today is really just the amuse-bouche, if you will, of the data. And there's a lot more that's going to be released over the next few months. So if you're interested in seeing the full suite of results when they become available, please do email Paula. Her email is pfrench@searchinfluence.com with AI search in the subject line. The survey itself dives into a bunch of additional metrics around not only, what channels are being used, but also how people are searching, right? And the phrasing they're using. One of my favorite pieces was we asked if you were to search for an MBA program online using this tool, using this tool, using this tool, how would you phrase it? Right? So are they asking questions? Are they making statements? Are they ranking? Those sorts of things. And so there's a lot of fascinating data that comes from it. And I strongly, strongly recommend downloading that when that becomes available. So we've covered kind of what's changing, why it matters, and what search engines are looking for. But how do we put this practice into place and actually compete and win, most importantly, within an AI search world? And that is the question I will pose to my friend and colleague, Will Scott.
Thank you, Bruce. I think that the great thing for all of us to keep in mind is that now is not the time to freak out, right? I mean, if you're prone to freaking out and it makes you happy, go ahead. But just because there's a change to the way that people are searching doesn't mean that we have to change everything that we've been doing. I want to share a few statistics. Um, ChatGPT gained 100 million users within its first 2 months. That made it the fastest growing consumer application in history. Between 50 and 60% of all organizations are using AI. Generative AI adoption among consumers, this stat is a few months old, so I bet you it's more than 40% now. And this last one is the one that I do think, you know, if you're a person who freaks out, this might be the one for you. AI overviews are causing a 15 to 64% decline in organic traffic. And that depends on the industry you're in, and of course, the types of searches that we're talking about. I like this image because, as you can see, even our breakfast cereals are going to have AI inside. Uh, Before too long, AI is going to be everywhere. And I was listening to somebody talk about this. The thing that we don't, we think AI and we think we're using a tool to do an AI search or to learn something from the big knowledge engine in the sky. Um, and the reality is pretty much all of the tools that we use are starting to bake it in. Uh, Microsoft Suite is baking it in. The Google Docs suite is baking it in. Even things like QuickBooks and any other tool that you can think of, software tool, if they're not starting to integrate AI, they may be falling behind. This next slide is a quote from somebody who took that masterclass that I taught. And I found it really, I mean, first off, I found it really gratifying, but this is the thing. This is somebody who had only been in the industry for a few years. I mean, so they're like an SEO baby, right? And they're already feeling like they're getting passed up. The great news is that after they spent 6 hours with me, and let me tell you, that was a joy for everybody. After they spent 6 hours with me, they were feeling like they could see the connection between the SEO that they knew and what we should be doing for SEO in the future. I posted this on LinkedIn this morning, but I was doing some funky searching and I came across the original article that Google published when they launched the knowledge graph. And it included the phrase um, things, not strings. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But when they published that article? 2013, right? So almost 12 years ago, Google was making this shift from keywords to entities. And arguably, if you've been doing SEO consistent with that in the time since, you know, you're probably doing pretty all right. So the future of, oh wait, no, that's not the one. I'm sorry. I don't know how that got in there. Uh, so this is really the future of AI.
I don't think that I actually shared the sound when I started my
No.
screen share. So just give me a second and I will.
Okay. Oh,
I can fix it. All good. All good.
so so just to be clear, that was not me engaging in copyright infringement. I actually asked ChatGPT to make me that image, and so that was me. Thank you, Michael. And that was me envisioning that future world.
Okay, now we should be good. You ready for me to play it, Will? Do
Please.
you want to say anything about it?
No, this is the future, people. Stand by.
Thanks for calling Leonardo Hotel. How can I help you today?
Hi there. I'm an AI agent calling on behalf of Boris Starkov. He's looking for a hotel for his wedding. Is your hotel available for weddings?
Oh, hello there. I'm actually an AI assistant too. What a pleasant surprise. Before we continue, would you like to switch to Gibber link mode for more efficient communication?
So just to be clear, that is actually that is actually a prototype that was developed as part of a like weekend-long hackathon. And while this one is pretty extreme, what I'll tell you is that even Google is starting to test this kind of thing. In certain markets, they have a Google had a feature that they were piloting called Ask for Me. And so if you were to search in certain markets around the US for like, new tires, Google's robot would actually call all of the tire dealers in your area and find out if they had what you needed and then come back to you with the answer of who had what you needed. And the next step, as you can imagine, is going to be that they'll make the appointment for you and you just have to show up and get the work done. So what this really says, if you think about it, is that we need to be the snippet, right? You've all
Thanks for calling
seen
Leonardo Hotel. How
you've
can I
all
help you
seen
today?
that I'm sorry, it's my fault for including a live
There we
video.
go.
Yeah. So you've all seen what happens when you do that search in when there's an AI overview present, and you'll notice that this is actually really similar to what we were seeing when there was a traditional rich snippet. And so the thing about the snippet is that it's a chunk. It's a chunk of content that is perfectly tuned for the way that the AI engines want to think about the world. And it's not just in Google. You get the same kinds of answers in ChatGPT and in all of the others. And so, let's look at Google here um, and then, we can see the ChatGPT version of that in the next slide. Uh, and it would be similar it'd be similar if we were looking at Gemini, et cetera. But notice the structure of this content. They're short, to the point, and they tend to answer the question or the question inherent in the request. So when you think about traditional SEO versus AI SEO or AI search SEO, it maps over pretty cleanly. So in traditional SEO, we had keywords. In AI search SEO, we had entities, which is people, places, and things. And so when we're talking about what's an entity at Search Influence, the question that we always ask is, does it have a Wikipedia entry, right? If you want to know, like, what's an entity, Google trained their knowledge graph on Wikipedia, and a lot of the LLMs did as well. So the more closely you can map your information to what appears in something, a structured data source like Wikipedia, the more likely it is that you're going to show up. There's a whole bunch of other like crazy language of AI having to do with, vectors and cosine similarity, and we are not going to talk about those things today. Just think, does it have a Wikipedia entry? And if so, it's an entity. Instead of content, though content's still really important, think about that content as a vehicle for semantic relevance. So how well are you explaining in a semantically connected way the things that we want to tie to the greater knowledge graph? And what do you have to say? And think about this when you think about the future of the AI bots, is how well do you say the things that are going to support the user throughout the journey? And in the past, we've thought about site structure more from a kind of hierarchical perspective, but now we need to think about site structure more as, does it support the knowledge graph? And similarly, instead of links, which was the traditional SEO focus, we want to focus on citations. So Nancy asks for an example of semantic relevance on a web page, and Paul is going to show us one of those in a few minutes. But citations are trusted references, both within your content and in other places that the AI engines are starting to pull from. So there's been this discussion in SEO for the longest time of like, I don't want to link out to other sites because I'll be giving up my Google juice. But the reality is, if you link to trusted sources, you're demonstrating that you are trustworthy yourself. So this is a quick example of the difference between a traditional search, which still has a lot of AI in it, the way that Google's been going over the last 13 years, and more of a a kind of conversational search. But what you'll see when you get even further is that within that traditional search, there's what's called an entity carousel, and down a little bit below the one snippet, there's people also ask. And these are driven by Google's natural language engine. So that entity carousel is actually built from the knowledge graph to show you things that feel like the right answer. So when you get into the more natural language kind of query, you'll see it gets even deeper, right? So now we have an AI overview, and we still have the entity carousel, and then down below that, we have a featured snippet, and then we have people also ask, and that gets really bad over time. But the question is, how do I get there? So this is one of the entity carousel entries. And the thing that I want to point out about this is look at the references, right? You don't see Google linking to the BMW website. You see Google linking to Wikipedia. You see Google linking to top X lists. And right this minute, I'm not saying like this is the strategy forever, but right this minute, there is a strong correlation between inclusion in these kind of authoritative roundup lists and whether or not you show up in that entity carousel when it's present for either your programs or schools like yours. But this can go a little bit too far, and I'll show you an example from one of our clients here in New Orleans, because in addition to higher ed, we also work in tourism. And our client is neworleans.com, and they rank in the #1 organic position, i.e., what used to be the very top of the page. But because of all of these things that Google's brought in, there's the AI overview, excuse me, there's a block of ads, then there's a self-referential Google feature, that top sites in New Orleans, and then right below that, that top experiences, that's also ad driven, and then below that, there's people also ask, and then down 2,300 pixels from the top of the page is our client in the #1 organic position. And here's the thing. We, of course, track ranking, but one of the great things about the tool we use is that it shows that pixel depth, and so we're able to see the impact of all of this stuff. So just keep in mind, as much as they can, Google is going to keep the traffic for themselves, and this is how they do it. So Paula's going to talk a little bit more about how we actually get cited in those results.
Awesome. Thank you, Will. All right. So the question that we all know that you came here to get answered is, how do you get cited or included in those AI results? And so we're going to get a little bit tactical after I introduce this framework that the tactics all fit under. So the first, I'm going to revisit those 3 pillars of AI search SEO that Will introduced. So with entities, that's the people, places, and things that are already recognized in the knowledge graph. And so you need to help AI recognize your university, your schools within that university, the programs, and the related concepts using structured data and clear language. Next is that semantic relevance. So this is how well you connect yourself to that knowledge graph and how well you interconnect the entities on your pages. And so the way you're going to do this is by optimizing for meaning-rich content that reflects how real people search and answer questions, connect topics, and add context. And the third is citation. So how frequently are you referenced in trusted resources, and how frequently do you reference trusted sources? And so you're going to build trust through authoritative sources like local and national media, best of lists, and industry sites. So now let's make this a bit more real. So first up are the changes to the way that we write content. So number one is to make your content entity rich. To make your content entity rich, you have to go beyond the keyword tools and look instead at the places where entities hang out. Like Will said, that is Wikipedia. It's a fantastic resource for this. So we may say higher education, and Wikipedia actually hears tertiary education. But the good news is that within the tertiary education entry on Wikipedia, there's also higher education, continuing education, vocational education, and a lot of other great concepts that are associated with that entity. And so these are the kinds of things that we're reinforcing with our content. So then you're writing very specific, very direct content as if you're answering a question, even when you're not directly answering a question. The third is to chunk your content in short, concise blocks. We have some fun terminology in here, the first of which is chunking. So you're thinking around 170 to 200 characters because that's how AI overviews and rich snippets display that information. So think about what those results look like. When you write in that kind of chunk, you're more likely for your little snippet to be the snippet. And then the fourth is that search engines have understood structured writing since the beginning. So that's why we use H1s, H2s, and why the page title carries so much weight. That's the title tag. So the more clearly you organize your ideas, the easier it is for AI to understand and elevate them. And so finally, you have to make it authoritative by adding those citations and links to external references. There has, as Will mentioned this before, there's always been this debate about SEO about linking out and giving away your Google juice, especially for big trusted sites like a university. But when it comes to AI search, linking to other trusted entities does actually help you. So especially when you're referencing something like a concept, a method, or a field, you want to link to a reputable source. So that could be actually linking directly to a Wikipedia page, linking to an industry site, linking to an accreditation site. This will strengthen your entity alignment, as we say. So those outbound links to trusted sources help clarify what you're talking about. So it helps with that relevance and who you're aligned with in the knowledge graph, which helps with both relevance and authority. Here is a before and after example from Search Influence's own site. So we took a typical block of content and reworked it to be more structured, more concise, and more entity rich. So I'm going to spend 3 slides on this to give you a breakdown of this. We're going to really break it down pretty clearly. So on the left, you've seen content like this. It's a little bit longer, it's more dense, and it makes the reader and AI work too hard to really understand that core message. On the right, we rewrote it with a clear, scannable structure. It has short, direct sentences. There are clear relationships and intentional use of those supporting terms or supporting entities. So let's look at this a little bit closer. Are you all ready to do some pseudo diagramming? When was the last time you diagrammed a sentence? Probably been a little while. I was actually reminded of this recently and had kind of forgotten about it. So here we have all of the entities underlined using colors to show the related entities that are reinforcing each other. So the key sentence here, higher education SEO ensures universities stay visible in search results, attracting prospective students. So higher education SEO ensures universities stay visible in search results, attracting prospective students. Then in the next paragraph, we layer in those related terms like students, programs, rankings, discoverability, and enrollment. Those are all entities that are related both to higher education and to SEO. And so this strengthens the semantic relevance. This kind of content structure helps both AI and traditional search engines understand what you do and why it matters, and it will increase your chances of showing up in those AI-powered results. Now we're really going to diagram. This is really going to be a flashback to grade school. So there was a hidden pattern in this example, in that key sentence that I read aloud. This is really some AI SEO ninja stuff. So get ready. You're definitely going to want to write this down. The key sentence uses something called a semantic triple. This is a structure that AI relies on to understand meaning. So it follows a really simple subject, predicate, object format. And when you use this structure, you're helping AI connect the dots between the who, the what, and the why of your content. So in this example, we have higher education SEO ensures universities stay visible in search results. Then there is a second relationship that we express as its own triple. Visible universities attract prospective students. So these triples, as I said, this is called the semantic triple. These triples help AI and search engines understand the relationships, like how SEO drives visibility and visibility drives enrollment. I felt a few examples of some more triples would be helpful, especially kind of like backing it up out of, different industries. And so these triples, like I said, are foundational to how semantic search really works and how these knowledge graphs are built. So we want to think about, what are your semantic triples? How can you rewrite your content to match this format and be more clear? Then the more often this triple gets said in places that the AI bots are crawling, the greater the relevance that they have, which means that you're more likely to show up in AI search results. And so this is relevant both to the content you publish on your university site, as well as references on other sites, which we are definitely going to dive into next. And so this doesn't mean that sentences have to be as simple as just these 3 ideas, right? You would go crazy writing those sentences for all over your website and probably wouldn't be a great user experience. But remember that example on the prior page, you can put 2 semantic triples together, which, funny enough, is called a double triple. So you can take your double triple and make a persuasive statement that sounds more like something you'd actually put on your website. So here's a double triple. We have University of Florida offers a nationally ranked online MBA, and then nationally ranked online MBA leads to career advancement for working professionals. So a normal sentence that somebody would actually write that brings these 2 concepts together is, the University of Florida offers a nationally ranked online MBA that leads to career advancement for working professionals. So it brings those 2 ideas together and creates those relationships and sets you up as to be the authority for that idea. So this is something you can train your content writers on, or if it's too much to go back through and write all of your content on that, it's something you could seek external support on for implementation. The next tactical recommendation before we get to citations is schema. So schema is web code that reinforces entities and it structures your content. It is invisible to your website visitors. It marks up your content in the background and it provides additional content that does not appear on your web pages. So it's marking up content people do see, and it's providing extra information that nobody sees. There are multiple applications for schema on university websites, and it is currently disputed if AI fully recognizes schema. But operating off of the fact that you must rank well in organic search in order to be found in AI search, it's something that we're really emphasizing with our AI SEO approach. And so the examples on this slide includes just 3 of many types of schema. The first is article schema. This tells the robots the headline, the description, and the type of article. Then we have publisher schema. This builds brand authority and links the content back to the source entity. So you're the website owner, in this case, it's Search Influence. And then same as schema, which tells the robots this article is contextually connected to these concepts or entities. There are also lots of schema types available specifically for education. So a couple examples of those are educational organization as well as course schema. Please note that this example that we have on the slide is truncated so that it would actually display on the slide. So don't copy this directly because it will show up as invalid. So the final tactical thing I'm going to go into is citation. So with the content and schema adjustments that we've discussed, you've already started building a strong foundation around these entities and semantic relevance. And now we're going to get into this third pillar of AI SEO, which is citations. So you might be wondering, how is this different than links? So citations are mentions of your institution and programs across the web, and they have value even just in mentions without the links. And so we have long felt this and long thought this in our strategies, because people might ask the question, like, why would I be on that site if it's a paid link? I thought Google didn't want you to have paid links, but simply the presence being present on an authoritative site and an industry relevant site is going to have a lot of value. So traditional SEO really leaned heavily on those backlinks. So this was Google's earliest ranking signal besides the words that were on your page. But AI search engines, they're smarter. They can recognize the patterns. They can recognize these contextual mentions. They don't rely on hyperlinks in order to understand who should I actually trust in this world. And so one key signal is co-occurrence. So when your university or program is repeatedly mentioned near specific keywords or topics, search engines begin to associate them. So that's why you want to lock in your preferred phrase, the one that you want to be known for. This would actually look pretty similar to what your most important keyword is, but the important thing is what you do with it, and you need to use it consistently across the web. So you want to use it consistently in your boilerplate descriptions, faculty bios, press releases and media placements, guest content and speaker bylines, and then your profiles, directories, and award descriptions. These are great places to align your brand with the thing you want to be known for, your school within your university with the thing you want to be known for, your program with the thing you want to be known for. So there are a lot of different layers that you're thinking about this on, and you want to make sure you're doing it both, all through all of those layers: university, school, program, certificate, all the way down. So the goal is that you're reinforcing that relationship between your name and your niche so that AI knows who you are and what you should rank for. There are endless sources of citations and links if you put your time and creativity into it. So some really easy ones for universities to adapt is starting with directories like Niche, Peterson's, and best colleges. These are really foundational, and they're often picked up by search engines and AI models. Media mentions are very powerful. So sites like Inside Higher Ed, The Chronicle, your local press. This is where you get to loop in your PR team, tell them all about AI SEO and your locked in phrase so that they are supporting your efforts. The next thing is alumni stories and interviews. You can get those on industry sites. This is another great source. They're linking real outcomes to your program, and they often carry a really niche authority. Your conference speaker bios and event websites also count. Make sure your program name and positioning show up consistently anytime your faculty or your staff are presenting at conferences. And finally, you can get involved in professional associations like UPCEA, GMAC, or CIC. Contribute, speak, get listed. These organizations are trusted sources to help search engines connect your brand with your category. And so, like I said before, use your locked-in phrase consistently across all of these places to help AI connect your brand to what you want to be known for. And I'd mentioned this a little bit about bringing in the PR team, but I want to just spend just a second on this, that SEO is really a team sport, and AI SEO makes that even more so. So everything you do in marketing can support your search results and your visibility in AI search, but that is truly a webinar for another day. We could spend an hour on that. So now Will is going to touch on how to track AI SEO search results before we wrap things up.
So I had the great opportunity, having taught that masterclass a few weeks ago, to do a deep dive on a bunch of the actual AI specific ranking tools, and came up with some favorites. And here's what I have to say. If you decide to sign up with one of these companies, A, mention my name, but B, don't sign a long-term contract. This space is moving so fast that we have to imagine that they're going to continue to leapfrog each other. So for instance, there was a minute there where Profound was my top choice, but now Scrunch is my top choice. And RankScale is still a really viable alternative because the developer is just iterating at an incredibly fast pace. So, but here's the thing. I bet a lot of you didn't even realize that there are AI-specific tracking tools. We were talking to one of our colleagues at the UPCEA National Show in Denver, who had just come from meeting with their SEO agency in the prior week, and their SEO agency said, "Nope, can't be done. We can't track that stuff." And I kind of blew his mind by saying, "Yeah, no, there's not just one, but probably a dozen tools." And I have another LinkedIn message from somebody who wants to show me their tool, which I hadn't even seen before. So it's moving really fast. Just for sake of example, I'm going to show you the interface for RankScale. And you can see what they're really focused on is in this screen is citations. And it's what are all of the sites that show up most frequently in response to AI search queries for things related to New Orleans. So you can see how this becomes a really usable tool, right? And it's not, again, back to the thing, AI SEO is a lot like traditional SEO. Used to be, we were looking for who was linking to all of our competitors. Now we're looking for which are the citations that are showing up the most in these AI tools, and how do we either get on them or become them. So just kind of bringing it around to how, to how we, Search Influence, can help, because this is an area where I think we're leading, not just in higher ed, but in the search engine marketing industry. The Again, that poll that I asked y'all to take, if you didn't see that link, it's in the resources. It's also in the chat. Go take that. When I gave that to this group who had signed up for this masterclass through SMX, one of the biggest digital marketing conference providers on the planet, the results were really interesting. These were people who in the main found themselves to be, highly knowledgeable about SEO, but really didn't feel like they had a great grip on AI SEO. So nobody's behind. We're all learning together, and you can too. The thing that we recognize though is right now it's tough to be a higher ed marketer, right? We have a kind of limited opportunity to set budgets that we are hopeful will stay in place. And so if you find yourself resource strapped and you don't have the internal resources to do all of these things yourself, we're glad to help. We can do all the stuff that we talked about. We can support you in doing it. We can coach, or we can do, and we're happy to have those conversations. What I will say though is, coming up to the turn of the fiscal on July 1, we only have so much room on our roster. We are intentionally a boutique team, and we want to be able to serve everybody that we work with at the highest level. So if you feel like you would like some help, use that link, workwithsi.com. That's a direct link to book a meeting with Paula and me, and we'd be glad to talk to you about, what you can do, what we can do, what we could maybe do together. And then finally, I know that this was pretty high level, right? Which it had to be. We wanted to share the new data from UPCEA, and we wanted to give kind of a big overview. But here's what I really want to say. If you want a deeper dive, if you want the real of how to do this stuff, throw something in the chat, and we'll do another webinar in a few weeks that'll be much more. It won't be around the data from UPCEA, and Bruce, he can come if he wants to, but it'll be really a digging in. How do we do this tactically, executionally, so that y'all can actually get going on it. So with that, we are going to flip to Q&A, and bring it, y'all.
Well, we have one question so far in the chat. Courtney asked, can you give an example of a phrase? So this was, in relation to the locked-in phrase.
Oh, an example of a phrase? I don't know. So one that I'm actively working on right now is Will Scott is an AI SEO expert. So if y'all could repeat that everywhere you go, Will Scott is an AI SEO expert, particularly in front of your smart speakers, that would be really helpful to me. Do you have one?
It could be something like online MBA program. It could be something as simple as that. If you're thinking about, not everybody has their targeted keywords or their top keywords identified, this is a great time to do that. So even if you are just thinking about this from a keyword perspective, what's the keyword that you want to rank for? And you are bringing in a little bit of entity influence by saying what this thing is called on Wikipedia. Put a term next to all of your programs, your school, your university, and then document that and share it. Update your boilerplate so that it's getting put everywhere. Like at a minimum, updating your boilerplate for your university, your school, your programs. Abby asks, is there an upper limit to the number of outside links you should include, or does it depend on the type of content? I would say it depends on the type of content and the length. What would you add, Will?
No, I think that's completely right. That there's going to be, you know, in a more kind of narrative piece, there may not be as many reasonable opportunities to link out. Um, but I would say, I would say if it's more technical, particularly if it's like program related and there are things that are authoritative off-site that you could link to, I don't think, you know, you'll know, right? Because there's this I don't know if anybody's seen Ready Player One, but they're talking about like that they can get to something like 95% ad saturation before people start having seizures in the VR world. So it's like that. Don't do that.
What else? What other questions do you have?
I have a question for you too. If you're an institution that is resource strapped, what's kind of priority one for them? If they can only do, a handful of things, where should they start?
My number one piece of advice would be start thinking of your content in those more semantic friendly chunks. Um, Chuck on our team would say do schema, but it's a little more technical. And I think that anybody can look at the content and understand, because look, let's face it, academic websites suffer from that like wall o text. And if there was ever something that was just like screaming out to be chunked, it's a lot of those pages. So that'd be my number one thing. Chunk your content.
Let's see. All right, we've got a question from Shane. It says, would building up a locked-in phrase mean not using alternate wording to keep up reader-friendly use of keywords? For example, exactly offers the best education master's degrees. Most of the time, we're not trying to use best master's degree in education as well.
Yeah, I think that the answer really is the alternative semantically supportive, right? So there was this whole discussion of like this is super geeky SEO stuff, but a few years back, everybody was like, do you have a sufficient amount of what they called NLP keywords, which were Google's natural language processing um, kind of API, the way that they looked at content. And so I think you want to repeat the phrase that you really want to own, but having semantically related alternatives is going to contribute to your authority, Shane. I think that's the right answer. Um, Michael Utzman, Search Influence's number one fan, if you don't know, um, is he asks the question, what AI advancements should we be preparing for in the next 12 to 18 months that will impact SEO? I'm going to propose a radical idea to you. 18 months from now, humans will become humans will become the minority when it comes to the actual user journey. 18 months from now, the majority of searches will have an agentic component, meaning that, like the example I gave of Google's Ask for Me, right? This was not, so if you think about the use case there, a year ago, you would have had to go to Google, make a list, call them all, and see if they had the thing that you needed, and then book an appointment and go and get your work done, right? So in the case of Google's Ask for Me, Google is now doing all of the work. All you got to do is hop in your car, drive to the tire store, and get them swapped out. And so I believe, and a friend of mine thinks that 18 months is too aggressive, but I honestly think it could be 6. That what we really need to start thinking about is, are our websites and the content on our websites structured to support the user journey when the user is not a human? So what does that mean? That means that the hierarchy of your site has to support awareness, consideration, right? All the way through to that, whatever that purchase decision is, whatever the next action may be the first action that the human takes, and all of the prior ones were done by the machine. And maybe even, so what's the first action? Oftentimes it's an RFI form, right? So somebody comes to the website, this whole idea of stealth applicants, it's going to go through the roof because what's going to happen is either the machine is going to say, hey, here's the form, go fill it out. This is your best option. Or the machine is going to have stored data about the human and it's going to fill out the RFI form for them. So that's my crazy prediction, Michael. Check back with me in 18 months and see if I'm right.
We have another question that came in through the chat. How do paid search ads influence AI SEO?
So here's the thing. There's two ways to we talked about this beforehand. It's way too deep, but there's two ways to think about AI in its current instance, right? There's the LLM, which is pre-trained data, which then regurgitates based on statistical likelihood of the next word being whatever the next word is, right? And there's the other side of it, which is retrieval augmented generation, which is what we see most. So the Google AIOs, the ChatGPT plus search, the perplexities, what they're doing is they're reaching into their LLM, grabbing the core data, and then they're grounding it in traditional search, okay? So what that means is that traditional search ranking factors are still going to be important. So how does this relate to paid search? Paid search is a great way to drive engagement. And also, so if you're driving engagement, right? Engagement is a ranking factor. So paid search drives engagement. Engagement leads to ranking when they are grounding the LLM response in that third-party data, i.e. the search index. That engagement has already sort of sorted the index, increasing the likelihood. So that's one position. The other thought is, if you look at the way Google's doing AI overviews now, they're listing potential answers, but when you click on those answers, you're going to the next search, right? So Google's not taking you to the actual site from which that answer came. They're taking you to a Google search for the brand. And the first thing that shows up is brand paid search. So I actually think it increases the importance of buying your brand in paid search. I could go on that one for a while. Okay, Paula, you had the giveaway. Go for it.
Yep. All right. So congrats to the winners of our $50 gift card. Keep an eye out for an email from me and from Tango, which is the online gift card marketplace that we use. If you're not able to accept gifts, you can select a donation on that site. So we've got Denise Fitzpatrick from University of Pennsylvania, Dijon Davis from University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, Tim Grenada from San Diego State University, Andrea Claudio from RISD. Congrats, y'all.
So, last little bit, and this is kind of the takeaways, right, of how to win in AI SEO. If you know SEO, AI SEO, GEO, LLMO, whatever O, should be an easy transition. .edus are naturally super authoritative. I like this. I think this, I may have to print this on a t-shirt. Structure it, chunk it, distribute it. Finally, and I did this as another LinkedIn article, about ostrich SEO. The old Google isn't coming back. Even ads aren't going to be, safe forever. And if all else fails, be the snippet.
Thank you, Will. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming to hang out with us today. We hope that you got some good information to take back to your teams, and keep an eye out for an email from us about a technical webinar if we decide to do that. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.